and I condemn a Prime Minister who allows open use of crack, heroin, meth, and weapons in hospital rooms that threaten nurses and on school buses next to children. Will the Prime Minister reverse his extremist policies and the death?
Mr. Speaker, the leader opposite is showing us exactly what shameful, spineless leadership looks like. He shakes hands with white nationalists and then goes to actively court the support of those members and has the nerve.
It is a choice for him to implement extremist policies that have taken the lives of 2,500 British Columbians every single year. Since the NDP has asked him to reverse course on his and formerly their radical policy, 22 British Columbians have died of drug overdoses. But he continues to allow those drugs to kill the people in our hospitals and on our public transit. When will we put an end to this wacko policy by this wacko Prime Minister?
No. I'm going to ask the Honourable Leader of the Opposition to withdraw that term, which is not considered parliamentary.
Mr. Speaker, I replace wacko with extremist. He is an
I'm going to ask the Honourable Leader of the Opposition to please withdraw that comment and simply withdraw that comment.
I'll replace it with radical fascist policy.
I am not asking to replace. I'm asking the Honourable Member to just simply withdraw.
Mr. Speaker, I replace the word wacko with extremist.
To please withdraw that comment and simply withdraw that comment.
I simply withdraw and replace with the aforementioned adjective.
Mr. Poilievre, I have to name you for disregarding the authority of the chair. Pursuant to the authority granted to me by Standing Order 11, I order you to withdraw from the House and from any participation by video conference for the remainder of this day's sitting.
I see they've pulled the finance minister off the ice. She can't answer a question. So she mentioned she won't guarantee in law that the bottom 99.87% of Canadians will pay nothing. So let's make it a little bit easier for her. She claimed that she doesn't want welders to have to pay more. Will she amend her bill to ensure that not a single welder anywhere in Canada will be forced to pay this tax increase? Yes or no?
We will take no lessons of these conservatives, Mr. Speaker. Generational fairness is key to Canadians, Mr. Speaker, and that's why in the last budget we presented measures, Mr. Speaker, measures to build this country, measures to invest in our economy, measures to invest in the middle class, measures to help Canadians, Mr. Speakers. And you know what? Our capital gains change will help Canadians. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, can you believe they voted against tax fairness, Mr. Speaker? Against tax fairness, Mr. Speaker. On this side of the House, we will fight for Canadians and we will fight for the middle class.
Are they okay over there?
They're a little wacky.
I won't call them wacko, Mr. Speaker. That's unparliamentary. But
He chose to delay the passage of Bill C-59, which is also hurting his own caucus.
That's right.
Does the member for Battleford's Lloydminster now suddenly oppose maternity leave for adoptive parents? Surely the member for Cumberland-Colchester won't back down on his advocacy to remove the GST on therapy and counseling services. While the Conservative leader is muzzling his own caucus and putting himself first, we'll keep putting Canadians.
This one is just too easy. He walked into it. He had to muzzle a member from Newfoundland who called for an end to his leadership, joining another senator who did the same. because they understand that their constituents are literally starving and unable to heat their homes because the Prime Minister is quadrupling the carbon tax, doubling housing costs, and giving the worst inflation in 40 years. Why won't he listen to, instead of intimidating, his member for Newfoundland and put his leadership up to a review for... Keep crime down. Crime is way up. Violent crime is up 40% under this Prime Minister. And today he had his ministers hold a big press conference as their solution. And in it, they put out a press release that said, and I quote, "In 2022, approximately 9,600 vehicles were stolen in the Toronto area alone, representing a 300% increase since 2015. End quote. What happened in 2015? I know, he happened, Mr. Speaker. How can we make him unhappen and stop the crime?
In 2015, Stephen Harper presented a budget that had slashed funds for policing, slashed funds for CBSA officers, slashed funding for Veterans Affairs Services, and we were there to clean up the mess, to cut taxes for the wealthiest 1%, lower them for the middle class, to support families, to start moving forward on gun control in real ways while the Conservatives cozy up to the American gun lobbies. We've continued to step up and keeping Canadians safe. Let them bring assault weapons back to our streets. We'll keep Canadians safe.
Wow, is he ever losing control of himself? Oh my goodness. Screaming and hollering like that. Mr. Speaker, it's his press release that says that in Toronto, auto thefts are up 300% since he took office. His solution is to hold a summit. He held a summit on food prices. Food prices went up. He held a summit on housing. Housing costs doubled. How much is crime going to rise after all the bigwigs go to his summit?
Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition has trouble believing that we would actually include real facts in our press release, something he and the Harper government never did for years. Mr. Speaker, if Canadians are going to believe this Leader of the Opposition, he needs to come clean with who is funding his organizations.
He's sure getting desperate if he has to blame Conservative campaign workers for the fact that he raised food prices, especially when, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's new marketing director, Max Veliket, did marketing for Loblaws for 4 years. Don Guy, the Prime Minister's chief pollster, works for GT & Co., which collects checks from Loblaws. As does Dan Arnold, his other pollster, getting checks from Loblaws. Are they the ones that forced him to quadruple the carbon tax on our food?
Mr. Speaker, you can tell it's Wednesday because this morning the members of the Conservative caucus got to hear directly from Jenny Byrne, who sits in their caucus with them, giving them advice. So that is exactly where they're coming. When she is actively on the Loblaws payroll, while at the same time feeding lines to the Leader of the Opposition about food prices and concocting a theory around carbon price and grocery prices that, as the member from Regina Louvain pointed out yesterday, has no basis in fact, we see the kind of torque he chooses to pull.
Oh, Mr. Speaker, he makes it too easy. He talks about caucus meetings and Loblaws. Get this. The Prime Minister had someone who is his director of caucus services named Julie DeWolf, who is now a lobbyist for Loblaws. Up a lot of dirt. His chief dirt digger, Kevin Bosch, left his office so that he could go and work as a lobbyist for Loblaws. Would he like us to continue going down the list of all of his Loblaws lobbyists, Mr. Speaker?
It is quite something to watch the flailing of the Conservatives right now as they do anything to try to distract from the fact that their campaign manager, the Leader of the Opposition's top advisor, is and still gets contributions and paychecks from Loblaws.
The Prime Minister's Arrive scam is now flailing out of control. Today, revelations from a Joël Denis Bellevance that one Arrive scan company received $250 million in contracts. Let's get this straight. It's a company with 4 employees, headquartered in the basement of a tiny cottage. They got IT contracts even though they admit they do no IT work. $250 million. WTF.
Here, here. I'm going to ask the honourable opposition leader, please, to withdraw that comment and to use parliamentary language, please.
Where's the funds? Wouldn't condemn the racial slurs, but he did issue a vicious condemnation of his own record. Let me quote what he said about life in Canada after 8 years of his prime ministership, and I quote, "Yeah, grocery bills suck. Rent sucks. Mortgage renegotiations. Oh my God, how are we going to deal with it?" Mr. Speaker, this is life after 8 years. What is his slogan going to be in the next election? Vote for me and life will still suck?
Did he just say, vote for me and life will suck? I think that's what he just said. The reality is we have put forward smart, responsible solutions to fight climate change and grow the economy, to lift over 500,000 kids out of poverty, to invest in the kind of economy of the future, the good careers, whether it's in zero-emission vehicles, whether it's in mining or forestry, whether it's in advanced manufacturing. We're continue to bring more women into the workforce with initiatives like childcare. We're moving forward on dental care, which the Conservatives voted against for seniors and young people. We're going to be there to invest in a better future for Canadians.
Actually spoke the truth, maybe by accident, by saying that after 8 years, life sucks for the very middle class and those working hard to join it, to whom he promised so much. He taxed their grocery bills with a quadrupling carbon tax. He doubled housing costs after promising to lower them. He's unleashed a crime wave across the country. Now that he admits that life sucks under his leadership, why won't he accept our common sense plan to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime? Mr. Speaker, the NDP leader was just asking about why the Prime Minister gave tens of millions of dollars in corporate handouts to powerful grocery chains. So the answer, of course, is that he voted to let the Prime Minister do that. Not a single penny of that money could have gone without the vote of the NDP coalition partner. But we learned something else, that this might have been due to the influence of the NDP leader's spokesman and brother, whose company is a lobbyist for Metro. Would the Prime Minister support an investigation into whether or not the NDP leader's spokesman and brother has been unduly influencing the leader of the NDP?
Mr. Speaker, we can see very clearly that all the stories out about the lobbyists' connections with the Leader of the Opposition are actually hurting the Leader of the Opposition, which is why he's asking those questions of the NDP. We have a plan for the economy and the environment. He does not.
Mr. Speaker, with his comedy routine, I was going to say that he shouldn't quit his day job, but actually, he should quit his day job. But he shouldn't go into number crunching, whatever his next job is, because he doesn't believe the economy is about numbers. And I don't blame him, because if I had his economic record, I wouldn't want to talk about numbers either. But it might help him to go to the library and quietly study just a little bit. Will he commit to reading page 3 of the Parliamentary Budget Officer's report, which demonstrates Canadians pay more than they get back in the tax? Mr. Speaker, normally the NDP leader is well worth ignoring, but I just can't help myself. He says that the Prime Minister acts like he has no power to stop all of these greedy CEOs from ripping off consumers. Who else has the power? Well, the guy that joined the government 2 years ago. He's been in power during the worst food price inflation in over 4 decades. Will the Prime Minister agree with me that his carbon tax coalition is nothing more than an anti-competitive price-fixing scheme that is costing Canadians at the grocery store? Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has had a revelation. In an interview with the Halifax Chronicle Herald, he told how he responded to people asking for him to spend even more government money. And he said, and I quote, "As soon as you do that, inflation goes up by exactly the same amount." Right? right. Why didn't I think of that? My goodness. Spending money you don't have actually causes inflation. If he's in the middle of having epiphanies, has he also realized that budgets don't balance themselves?
But he stands against it with some made-up excuse around inflation when delivering services delivers for Canadians.
He calls his own words a made-up excuse, Mr. Speaker. You can't make this stuff up.
Like topping up the Housing Accelerator Fund with $400 million, a new $6 billion Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund to help communities build. We're leveraging transit funding to build more homes. We're launching a housing design catalog. We're incentivizing more skilled trade workers.
He's announcing a catalog, everybody. Your rent is doubled, but hey, you've got a brand new catalog. Mr. Speaker, the question was, will he build 550,000 new homes, yes or no? Speaker, it's not me that's doing personal or partisan attacks against this Prime Minister's agenda. It's his fellow Liberals and New Democrats. It's his coalition partner who simultaneously attacks everything he does and then enthusiastically stands up to support it. It's the Prime Minister who attacks his immigration minister for letting the system get completely out of control and then attacks himself for doubling housing costs, making life so unfair. If they're so busy attacking themselves and their own record, why don't they just call a carbon tax election so Canadians can vote them out?
This government is making the choice to invest in a fairer future for all Canadians, for every generation. That is the choice we're making. Now, the Conservatives are continuing to choose to stand with the wealthiest in this country, choose to do less to invest in childcare, less to invest in solving the housing crisis, less to support young people across the country who need to feel the opportunities they can build in the future again. We will continue to be there to put money in the pockets of Canadians, to put homes in their communities, to build a stronger future for them and their families, while the Conservatives continue to promote cuts and austerity.
There's nothing cheap, Mr. Speaker, about the Prime Minister spending $220,000 for food alone on a 6-day jet-setting tour for himself. All the while, homelessness up 38%. Toronto has 256 homeless encampments, where 1 in 10 people in that city are now eating at food banks. They join 2 million Canadians. The good news is life was not like this before this Prime Minister, and it won't be like this after he's gone. Can we not have a carbon tax election now to choose a government that will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives over this past session have stood in this House to stand against dental care for seniors. They've stood in this House to stand against expanding childcare investments in spaces. They've stood in this House to stand against the kinds of investments that are helping Canadians with diabetes, Canadians afford birth control. These are the choices that they are making. Now, they're filled with slogans and bumper stickers that don't solve problems but amplify anger, while we are focused on supporting Canadians. Canadians can make their choice about the kind of country they want to live in.
Speaker.